Ever since we've known dinosaurs once walked the Earth, we've been debating about what could have killed them off. There have been lots of ideas kicked around over the years, like global climate change, caused by shifts in the Earth's axis, or a series of monster volcanoes. And for the last 25 years, the most popular idea has been that dinosaurs were wiped out by a giant rock from space, an asteroid that created devastation on a global scale. But as correspondent Chad Cohn reports, not every scientist is ready to blame just the rock. Some believe the giant reptiles might have been taken down by something almost too tiny to see.
At the Point-R residence in Corvallis, Oregon, the workday starts early. At least, it does for George.
He's up with the dawn. He goes down in his socks or his slippers, sneaking so he won't wake me up.
As he makes his way downstairs to his homegrown lab in the basement, he's bent on finding things that no one else has even looked for.
He gets up in the morning to make discoveries.
Oh, wow, Roberta, come and look at this.
He's just like a kid that everything is new and wonderful.
For decades, George and his wife and colleague Roberta have bucked the trends in mainstream science, painting a novel picture of life in the ancient world. Preserved in pieces of amber, they've discovered insects, flowers, even tiny animals, all trapped in time. If this sounds familiar, it was their work that inspired Jurassic Park, in which scientists use amber to literally bring the dinosaurs back to life.
It's a dinosaur.
The movie depicted a mosquito that had actually been caught in resin and then fossilized into amber. And that's scientifically correct because amber preserves things so beautifully.
Scientifically correct, at least, until Jurassic Park scientists discover something no real scientist had ever found before. A 100-million-year-old mosquito trapped in amber with dino blood in its gut. They use it to recreate the mighty creatures.
This is a movie, this is a film, this is Hollywood. They can do whatever they want. That'd be neat, if we could actually do it.
And to date, only Hollywood can. But then in 2001, George received an unusual package by special delivery. A one-of-a-kind piece of amber containing a blood-sucking insect a lot like the one in Jurassic Park. Rather than using this extraordinary specimen to resurrect the dinosaurs, he believes it could help reveal what caused their demise. Most scientists theorize that dinosaurs died out suddenly in a fiery explosion caused by an asteroid, but not George. He believes by the time of the impact, most of the dinosaurs had already died.
You ask a scientist these days and they'll say a giant rock struck Earth 65 million years ago somewhere around the Yucatan and did in the dinosaurs. But you're not buying that.
Well, the thing is that most people have kind of jumped on the bandwagon for the asteroid theory. And what we've done is to present a different theory.
Based on what he's found trapped in amber, George believes the mightiest of creatures, the dinosaurs, were brought down by the tiniest of creatures, biting, disease-carrying insects. His first clue was found in that special delivery.
We got the specimen, put it under the microscope, saw it's a sandfly. So we went to the next objective, magnified it a little bit, and then I noticed, see, there's some dark substance in the abdomen.
In all his years, he'd never seen anything like this. It appeared as if the sandfly's last meal was still trapped inside its tummy. It looked an awful lot like blood. He asked Roberta to take a look.
When I first showed her that, she said, well, you better make sure that that's blood. We've got some more work to do here.
Yep, you have your job cut out for you.
The only way to find out was to get a closer look. That meant cutting away the amber around the sandfly. It's very tricky business. In the process, he could easily destroy the tiny fossil, and maybe lose a finger too. After each cut, He polished and carefully examined the specimen.
You have to spend hours and hours and days and weeks and months turning the same specimen over.
Searching for the best angle to get a glimpse of what's inside.
You're looking through multiple layers of tissue, and you have to find that window.
By cutting the amber down to within 1 millimeter of the sandfly, George found the window he needed to see this: blood cells from what appeared to be a reptile. The discovery made him think,
If these sandflies were feeding on reptiles, certainly the dinosaurs would have been included.
while blowing up photographs of the sandfly, using an enlarger about as ancient as his amber, he made another astonishing find.
Wow, look at that.
This was no blood cell.
Roberta!
George found a microorganism inside the fly.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
But what was it? Consulting with experts around the world, he identified it as a deadly parasite called leishmania that's still around today, killing thousands of people every year. And it's spread by sandflies. Over the next few months, he found more evidence. 10 fossilized insects carrying the same deadly parasite. Then he found this, a midge with malaria, and another one carrying the parasite for sleeping sickness. All deadly infectious diseases.
How could this be? There was an epidemic going on, a whole epidemic. The dinosaurs were probably pretty sickly.
The Poinars believe their evidence points to widespread disease among the dinosaurs. But if there was in fact an epidemic going on, that's challenging to prove. We don't exactly have dinosaur tissue to do autopsies, and bones can only tell us so much.
They suffered just like we do from things like osteoarthritis. There's much less evidence of infectious disease. It's not going to leave impressions that paleontologists can find on bone.
They did, however, leave behind another, less appreciated memento that could yield some clues about the state of their health.
So you're telling me this is fossilized dinosaur poop?
Yes, fossilized feces from dinosaurs. We actually call them coprolites.
Coprolites.
Which is a scientific word for fossilized feces.
Okay.
Not necessarily dinosaur, but this is dinosaur.
This is dinosaur.
Not many coprolites survived the ages. But in Jurassic Park, the fresh stuff was easy to find. To put this in perspective, a male elephant, the largest land animal alive today, weighs in at about 6.5 tons, and he voids, on the average, about 22 pounds 17 times a day. That's over 300 pounds in 24 hours. Not a pretty sight. Now take that image and exchange it with this, a sauropod, and he's up to 15 times heavier than the elephant. It's hard to imagine how much dung this giant dumped.
When we look at pictures of dinosaurs, we often see them tromping through really pristine fields. Actually, those fields probably would have been littered with dinosaur dung.
Piles of poop swarming with insects and likely swimming in pathogens.
And that's an environment that today would potentially cause disease.
Yes, I have no doubt that the dinosaurs did get sick.
While Karen's coprolites don't show evidence of the deadly parasites George and Roberta discovered in ancient amber, she, along with graduate student Justin Tweet, did find this.
You see these lines here? Justin found about 200 of these very distinctive tiny burrows.
Burrows Karen believes may have been made by worms. There's a thought. Dinosaurs with stomach worms.
I think the dinosaurs were carrying all kinds of pathogens with them.
They had parasites, they had bacteria, lots of viruses. Without a doubt, microorganisms impacted the day-to-day lives of dinosaurs.
That's not exactly a surprise. Everything carries microorganisms. From worms to bacteria to viruses. We too host a multitude of guests that use us as a source of food and shelter. Most of the time we peacefully coexist. But as we all know, microorganisms can sometimes make us sick. But could they have caused the downfall of hundreds of species of dinosaurs?
It's unclear that we've seen, the ability of any microorganism, viral, bacterial, or otherwise, to have that level of impact.
Until recently, nobody was thinking that extinction could be caused merely by disease. That's changing.
In fact, some scientists think there's a perfect example of it taking place today, right before our eyes. Zoologist Andrew Blaustein of Oregon State University took me to a tiny pond so I could see for myself.
The scale is unbelievable. It's worldwide, and it's similar to the dinosaur extinctions, except it's happening in modern time.
And this time, it's happening to amphibians. Frogs, toads, and salamanders are disappearing at an alarming rate. Since the 1970s, over 100 species have gone extinct.
They are in trouble, big trouble.
And one of the reasons is the spread of infectious diseases.
Here's a perfect example. Here you see a little frog. This is a tree frog. And these things are getting infected by all kinds of diseases. In the same body of water where I just picked this guy up, there are these snails. That snail carries a parasite that infects that frog.
Andrew and I were often interrupted by another example.
You hear that bullfrog out there? This is not a native species to the western United States, and it carries a deadly fungus known as the chytrid fungus, and the native species right here in this pond and lake can get that fungus. As a matter of fact, every single bullfrog that we find in this area has been infected, but they don't get sick. They just carry it.
The bullfrog, like the snail, is a new resident in the pond, and the parasites they carry are seen as invaders by the tiny tree frog's immune system.
This is what George Poinar's talking about. Well, we're seeing the same thing here today. I don't think George went far enough. I think it's a lot of diseases, and not just diseases that come from biting insects, and I think he'd agree.
Graduate students Julia Buck and Catherine Searle take swabs off a tiny tree frog's belly to check for the deadly chytrid fungus. So far, over 30% of the tree frogs are infected. But even Andrew doesn't believe this extinction event is caused by disease alone. Environmental changes like global warming and pollution make animals more susceptible to getting sick.
It may not be an overt disease that kills these things. These things can have multiple insults that really mess up their immune system.
And we can apply that to what might have happened to the dinosaurs 65 million years ago?
There were massive global changes, global climate shifts. Those could have triggered disease events.
Just like the tiny tree frogs, the mighty dinosaurs world was changing. From radical shifts in ocean temperature, to an increase in volcanic activity, to an explosion of flowering plants that nourished a growing insect population. More biting insects, according to the Poinars, meant new, deadly diseases being carried to a species already struggling to adapt to change.
When any population is stressed, diseases emerge and can run rampant. These would have been completely new diseases that the dinosaurs didn't know about before, didn't have any experience with, and they wouldn't have had any immunity to them.
We may never know if the Poinars theory is right, but one thing is for certain. They've brought us closer to the fantasy world of Jurassic Park than any other scientists, and promise to keep the discoveries coming, all from the comfy confines of their basement.
We believe that insects, little tiny sandflies and ticks and mites and everything were feeding on those dinosaurs. So that really puts insects at the top of the food chain.
Wow, Roberta, look at this. It's a biting midge, and you can see the eyes and the mandibles as well.
Wow, that's really fantastic. Look at those mandibles. They get a good bite out of something. Maybe even a dinosaur.
Maybe so.
Dawn, he goes down in his socks or his slippers, sneaking so he won't wake me up.
As he makes his way downstairs to his homegrown lab in the basement, he's bent on finding things that no one else has even looked for.
He gets up in the morning to make discoveries.
Oh, wow. Roberta, come and look at this.
He's just like a kid.
The most popular idea has been that dinosaurs were wiped out by a giant rock from space, an asteroid that created devastation on a global scale. But as correspondent Chad Cohn reports, not every scientist is ready to blame
That everything is new and wonderful.
For decades, George and his wife and colleague Roberta have bucked the trends in mainstream science, painting a novel picture of life in the ancient world. Preserved in pieces of amber, they've discovered insects, flowers, even tiny animals, all trapped in time.
just the rock. Some believe the giant reptiles might have been taken down by something almost too tiny to see.
At the Poinar residence in Corvallis, Oregon, the workday starts early. At least, it does for George.
He's up with the...
Ever since we've known dinosaurs once walked the Earth, we've been debating about what could have killed them off. There have been lots of ideas kicked around over the years, like global climate change, caused by shifts in the Earth's axis, or a series of monster volcanoes. And for the last 25 years,